what we really wanted to do was provide them with a solution where they can manage it all themselves. They have full control, but at the same time, they're keeping the majority of the profit for these properties that they acquired in the first place to attain eventually whatever that financial freedom goal
Sure.
is.
It is my pleasure to welcome Ryan Barone. He is the CEO and founder of a great software called RentRedi, and we're going to get a little demonstration of this today, and I hope it is valuable for you in managing your portfolio. Ryan, just to start us off here before you share your screen and we go into some real specifics of how it all works, tell us what's sort of the elevator pitch for RentRedi. You know, there's so many different players in this space. They all sort of do a little different thing. You know, some have kind of a specialty, a niche. What's your thing at RentRedi?
Definitely. So really the target that we're going after are typically independent landlords, people that have full-time jobs and are juggling some properties on the side. That's really their way of meeting whatever financial freedom means for them, either
Right.
retire early or put a kid through college or go on a few extra vacations. And what we found was that they were pinned between two not so great options, either hire a property manager, which for a lot of the time means they get all their time back, which is great. But they're paying 10 to 12% and losing all of their profit, or manage it all themselves on spreadsheets, which is the route a lot of them are going, where they have no time now, but they keep all the profit. And so what we really wanted to do was provide them with a solution where they can manage it all themselves. They have full control, but at the same time, they're keeping the majority of the profit for these properties that they acquired in the first place to attain eventually whatever that financial freedom goal
Sure.
is. So really everything that we've developed to date has been focused on how do we help a landlord manage their property more easily, make a great experience for their tenant so their tenant doesn't want to turn over and go to another unit, and ultimately give you full control while automating those manual tasks that you don't really enjoy doing anyway.
Yeah. Okay, great. Well, why don't you share your screen and let's take a deep dive and take a look at it.
Absolutely. So this is the dashboard of RentRedi. The idea of this is essentially to allow a landlord to come in and at a glance understand anything they might need to do. And for reference, I am showing this on a desktop, but it is important for us that we provided a platform where landlords didn't necessarily have to be on a desktop. So everything I'm showing you on a computer today, you can do on a phone, so that if you are on the run or at work or somewhere else, you can be doing everything I'm doing on a computer still on your phone. You don't have to be, in an office in order to pull this off. So the idea of this dashboard, like I said, is to give you anything you need to do at a glance. And each section that you go into here is centered around that idea of helping you manage, and is designed intentionally very similarly. So if I go into properties, for example, I can see what are my units, any sort of listings I have open, what's occupied, what's expiring soon, what's vacant. And this lets me have somewhat of an idea of what I might need to do at any period of time, or any leases where I need to reach out to a tenant and say, hey, are you going to resign, or should I be listing this out to find a new tenant? And each section they go into will really be designed the same. But once I do list that out, and I can give you an idea of what that listing might look like if we jump over there. You'd have, any photos you might upload, maybe not my little snowman, but just to give you an idea. And you can outline on here any, amenities that you have for your unit, parking, how you want to be contacted, anything like that. And the really nice thing is I'm showing you a RentRedi listing, but we also syndicate this out to realtor.com and Doorsteps. And from here, a tenant can pre-qualify for your unit. Going back a couple of years, when I did your first podcast with you, or my first podcast with you, Jason, this pre-qualification was something that was pretty new for us at that point. We had landlords that came to us and said, I love the idea of applications. Obviously, I need to make sure my tenants are screened before they're coming in and renting with me. But also, I don't want to necessarily just meet with the first 5 that reach out. I want to meet with the best 5 that reach out, candidly. So if I could have a little bit of information that the tenant completes when they're applying to a unit, it would help me understand who's the best tenant for my unit. So if a landlord comes in and sees a pending pre-qualification, they can get an idea of, does this person have pets? How many additional occupants do they have? Do they have a guarantee? guarantor. And the idea of this is, if I don't accept pets in my unit and you have a golden retriever, as much as I love golden retrievers, I just can't accept you as a tenant. And vice versa. Maybe pets are totally fine. You're in a great credit and income range. And realistically, you would be a great tenant. And so the idea is, from that point, I can accept you as a tenant. I can customize whatever template I want to, have you go through and actually apply to my unit next. But at this point, I have a pretty good idea of, assuming everything you wrote on your pre-qualification is correct, we're moving forward and I'm spending time with someone that realistically could rent my unit. And once we get past the pre-qualification, the next step is really for someone to go through and complete a full application. They can do a full tenant screening, which is credit, criminal, and eviction reports that come through on that. And they can fill out a lot more information on their actual application.
So, Ryan, how much are those checks? And do you allow the owner to set the price, and what's the base price RentRedi's charging for them? How do the checks work for credit, criminal, and unlawful detainer, right? Are those the three you do?
Yes, credit, criminal, and eviction. And it's a great question. So there's no charge to the landlord. In fact, for RentRedi, landlords pay a flat fee of for the annual plan. It's $9 a month, and they don't have
per unit.
It's actually total.
Oh wow. Okay, so $9 a month is no matter how many units you have, right?
Exactly.
That's fantastic. And what do you charge the tenant for those background checks?
So the tenant will pay $35. And that's for all three included. Okay. Exactly. So the nice thing is we partnered directly with TransUnion on this. We get a little bit of a discount for the tenant in the process. And in fact, back to that point of automating the manual tasks, typically a landlord would accept an application and then go through a separate step of doing a screening. What we allow landlords to do when they're setting up their unit is they can actually set up automatic screening rules in here, where they can say, and they can change this per unit if they don't want it on all of them, but they can say anytime a tenant sends in an application, I want that full tenant screening with it. So I'm not doing that extra step. And basically we have tenants do that all together so that when you're coming in as a landlord, at that point, you have everything. You have your full application signed. We give you a PDF with a signature, and you have that credit, criminal, and eviction check.
Okay.
And then at that point, you're essentially ready to add the person in as a tenant. You can come in and add them. But one of the nice features that came out of actually through COVID, we had a lot of landlords saying, hey, I don't want paper leases even anymore. Can you give me a way to have a tenant sign digitally? And so when you come in here, you can either upload a lease if you already had them sign it on paper, or you can actually do you can drop in a PDF and have the tenant actually complete an electronic signature to eventually become a tenant and start paying rent through RentRedi in your unit.
Okay, now do you have prefab documents in the system, or is that not part of RentRedi?
So we allow you to upload any document you want. We don't have pre-set up documents so that if you have, some sort of requirement you need in your particular, area, you can have that exact one. Exactly. Okay. And then at that point, the tenant's paying rent. The really nice thing is we actually added even in some features that have been really popular with tenants, including the ability for them to report their on-time rent payments to credit bureaus to build their credit. Yep. And the idea with this came
tenants
from
like that.
Yep. Exactly. I mean, they're happy because they're building their credit, but we also found that landlords get their rent on time more often because they've now given a tenant an additional incentive to pay on time.
Sure.
So I can come in as a landlord and see what's due, what's overdue, what's been recently paid at any time. And as a note, this updates in real time. So the second the tenant hits pay, it will update in my dashboard. It eliminates the whole check is in the mail excuse that we heard from landlords early on as something that they wanted to get rid of.
So how does the payment collection work? Is that done through Plaid, or what's happening there with payments?
Yeah, absolutely. So when a landlord comes onto the platform, essentially they can add a new property, or if they've exited the process, they can jump back into one. So maybe I'll jump back into the setup for one of these. You can see here that as part of the setup for a property, whenever I'm adding one, I'll enter the address and how many units. I'll connect in here any bank account I want. And so I can come in and I can add another, and it will ask me to go through basically setting up a merchant account. We're partnered directly with Global Payments, who's one of the largest payment processors in the country. And all of those payments, essentially, the tenants pay in. You can see here that I'm selecting I can even have a different payment account for security deposits than I have for rent. So in certain
Oh,
areas where you have
that's
to keep
handy.
those two
Yeah.
separate, yeah,
Mhm.
exactly.
Yeah.
You don't necessarily have to have those deposits in the same accounts, but RentRedi will automatically make sure those deposit to the appropriate account.
Okay, now what about a different account for each property? Say you have, 10 different LLCs
Mhm.
and different properties are owned by different LLCs. Can you do that?
Absolutely. Yeah, definitely. So if I come into the payment accounts either from here or I can do it from my sidebar here, I can jump in and see a list of all of my properties and I can say, hey, I want one LLC for this, a different LLC for the other, and you can completely set up different LLCs for each individual property and even different bank accounts for security deposits. So if you wanted, 10 different accounts in here, you could have that if you needed to.
Okay, that's fantastic. And the tenants are paying by ACH transfer, right?
Yes, well, they can pay by ACH. That's what we typically encourage tenants to do, but they also can, if they want to, pay by card.
I'm assuming there's no fee for ACH on either side, right?
So there's no fee to landlords. The tenants pay $1 for ACH and they pay
Okay,
2.9% plus 30 cents for card.
for cards. Okay.
Mhm. And with an integration we have, which allows the tenants to log in through Plaid, which you were mentioning there. If they'd like, they can even log in with a Chime account. We have some tenants do that so that they can actually go to about 90,000 different locations across the US and deposit cash. So if they
Okay.
need to pay cash deposited in there and pay into the landlord, it even gives them the flexibility to do that.
And that's called Chime.
Exactly.
Okay.
So at that point, essentially the tenants in the unit, they possibly set up their credit reporting. They can even set up auto pay, so it automatically deposits not even into these accounts, but then ultimately into your bank account. Landlords can even set up automatic late fee rules so that they don't have to talk to a tenant and say, hey, you're late, you owe me this much. They come in here and say, if I want it, a grace period of 5 days, I want $10 the first day and 5 days every day after that. And oh, by the way, I'm in, Massachusetts or Texas or a number of different other states where there's a maximum late fee I can charge. They can also set that up as well, apply that to any or all units they want, and that will automatically be set up so that tenants, if they don't pay their rent, will have that applied to the rent they need to pay.
Okay.
And at this point, if a tenant ever has any sort of issue in the unit, there's the ability for them to submit maintenance requests. We have mobile apps for tenants, native mobile apps, so they can actually use the camera on that phone to submit in something like, what does a leaking sink look like? And you could come in here and watch the video of what it is, understand what the problem is, and ultimately fix it. And we really give three different options. The one I first described was you, maybe the landlord yourself, are solving the problem. You're actually fixing it. But you can also add in teammates who would only have access to, say, something like maintenance or even possibly only on a particular unit. And they would get this notification. They would go fix it. You have all the oversight, but none of the work. Or even a step further, you say, I don't even have somebody that does it. I don't want to do it myself. We actually have since added an integration, which came again from landlords on our platform that said, can you basically help find the vendor too? And so with this is an optional add-on that landlords can add. It's about $4 per unit if they want to do emergency only, or 12 for full maintenance coordination. And the idea is anytime a tenant submits an issue, it would come in here. You still have the oversight, but you can see here a timeline of where our partner Latchel will basically diagnose the issue with the tenant, schedule a vendor, wait the work date, ultimately complete the work, pay the invoice, and mark it complete in your dashboard. You as the landlord have done nothing along the way other than set this up and look anytime you want. But you have all the oversight to know that your property's
So
being
let's
taken
let's
care of.
let's unpack this a little more, Ryan.
Mhm.
So do you have a network of maintenance contractors around the country, or are your people finding them just one at a time? Or tell us about that. This is a really important component.
Sure. So Latchel is a partner of ours who manages over 65,000 units all across the US. And historically, they've targeted larger property management companies. The typical landlord that we're working with would have been not of the size they'd need to be for Latchel. And so what we did, which we've done on tenant screening now, on the credit reporting, maintenance, has been to go to them and say, hey, we have this very large group of landlords, thousands of landlords across all 50 states that would love to use this service, treat us as one massive portfolio, give them access to this. And that is where we've actually been able to get landlords access to this service, where Latchel uses that. They have networks of vendors all across the US. And if they ever don't have a vendor in an area, they'll try to go find another vendor, set up that relationship, and establish that for the rest of the network going
so
forward.
the people taking this either email notification or call, can they call them?
Yes, tenants will have a phone number in the app where they can call as well.
And they're calling Latchel, right?
Yes, well, they can either call Latchel or they can submit the request right through the RentRedi app, the same way they normally would with or without. And we automatically route and loop in Latchel into the situation. They make updates on their end, and it automatically updates in the RentRedi platform for you.
Okay, so are the landlords required to have any non-discretionary stuff? In other words, where they're giving discretion to Latchel to do this, for a certain amount of money per incident or per month or something like that. Is that required?
Yeah, that's a fantastic question. It is, and really to make sure the landlord's only paying for whatever they want to. So say a landlord's coming into RentRedi and they say, hey, I'm into maintenance. I want to add on this coordination. I don't want to do it myself anymore. We basically give them the option in here to select which properties they want, but then to set hard and soft budget limits, both for normal situations and emergency ones.
Okay, so wait a sec. So when you do that, that makes the cost not $9 a month, it makes it $25 a month, right?
Right. Yes. If you decide to add on the Latchel where you say, I don't want to handle the maintenance anymore, that would be an additional add-on that you'd be paying.
Okay. So it's $25 per month for the whole property, or no, it's $25 per month plus $12 per unit, right?
Yes.
Okay, got it. So that's for the service, but then if they elect to get the service, Ryan, what are the rules there? Let's go to these hard and soft costs, because this is the part that bugs landlords. I can tell you, we have thousands of clients and I hear it all the time. So
the idea with this is the soft limit is what you'd like. That's what you want Latchel to tell a vendor you're willing to pay. They will never tell a vendor your hard budget. So you may say, okay, maybe start negotiating at $100 or $200 or $300. My limit maybe is going to be $500 on a normal issue, and above $500, call me. And so it's very similar to the way you would set up a relationship often with a property manager, where you're saying, hey, within these constraints, I'm okay with you making a decision.
Ryan, we all know, everybody listening who follows my work knows that that's the traditional property manager relationship, but it's also what people hate about property managers.
Right. And so that's where we give the option. And to be honest, we have landlords that say, I want to handle it completely on my own, and that's totally fine. We have ones that set up their own teammates in here, which teammates are totally free, and that's okay as well. We have others that say, honestly, I don't want to do it myself. I don't have teammates. I need someone to help me with this.
Okay, got it.
And that's really why we added this. Is for that group of people.
So let's just clarify the amounts here. What are there limits or requirements on the soft and hard budget here? Is there a minimum?
If you set the hard limit too low, you would just be called all the time for things, but you could do that if you wanted to. So there's recommendations on it, but you can set it to whichever you prefer. And there's intentionally a difference between a normal and an emergency, because typically,
so now
if
let's
it's going to protect your property, you're okay.
Okay, so what's the emergency component? Are there requirements in here too?
So exact same type of thing, but this might be, maybe the difference between a crack in a wall versus something that's flooding the kitchen floor. Now, you might want a higher hard budget limit on this, because you might want Latchel to act quicker and not necessarily contact you, where if, a situation arises at 2 a.m., they can just be handling that.
We understand the issue, but I want to know what's the requirement of the software or Latchel's requirement. What is it?
It's really up to you to set whichever limits you prefer.
Okay, that's interesting. So you can make those limits low then?
Yes, you could make the limits low, and they'll ultimately just be calling more often. If they go over that limit, they would just call.
Got it. And this is per incident, not per month, right?
This is per month. So it's not. Yeah, exactly. So, and it's totally optional. You can even add it on some properties and not others. We have some landlords that say, hey, I'm remote. for some of mine, and I'm local for the others. And the local ones, maybe I want to manage myself, and the remote ones, I want someone else to handle, and they'll turn that
Understood.
on for one of those.
Okay, got it. Okay, go ahead.
And then at that point, ultimately, it comes down to communication. And it is April, so I should probably mention tax time. But there's the ability for you to notify tenants either just through the mobile app or via email. And so you can send this out to a tenant in a particular unit, to everybody in a whole property, or to all of your tenants. And this might be any message you want. You can customize what it's going to look like on the mobile app. You can customize whatever you want it to say over email. And we'll shoot that out to your tenants just to keep them up to date on garbage day changes, or, we need to shut off, gas in the building from 8 to 10 because of that leaking sink, to fix that issue. So you can always communicate out to your tenants as well.
Okay, sounds good. What else? I really think the big thing was the repairs we went over. I'm glad you offer the coordination. That's an awesome feature. And I'm also glad you let landlords decide on the amounts, the thresholds. That's great. What else would you like to say as we wrap it up here?
I think the only other major one that has come up, especially since we last talked, was a lot of landlords said to us, hey, you're helping me collect rent. You're routing that to the appropriate place. Can you make the accounting side easier? And so we did two things. One is you can export any of this data and do it all in spreadsheets if you want to. But other landlords said, I don't want to go the spreadsheet route. I want to get away from that route. And so we reached out and partnered with a company called REI Hub that's specifically built for landlords. And it allows you to essentially streamline the accounting side of things. And so we automatically sync all of the revenue data with REI Hub. REI Hub will pull in any expense data, and ultimately it'll create things, create any of your tax forms that you might need for year end, rather than you necessarily going the route of doing that spreadsheet export, providing that to, some sort of account to prepare for you, or trying to prepare it on your own. So it's an optional thing that is an additional cost to it, but completely optional. Some do it where they say, I'm going spreadsheets.
REI Hub, what's the cost for that?
So the cost for REI Hub depends on how many units you have. So in the smallest range, it's around $10. In the highest range, it's at $99 if you're above 20 units to 200 units and above.
Per month or per year? We don't know if it's.
That's per month.
Okay, got it. Okay, good. Ryan, thank you so much. Everybody can find this at RentRedi, and that's REDI.com, right?
Exactly right.
Excellent. Ryan Barone, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Jason.